Good morning, all. So I'm Barry Austin from Defence Digital, what used to be part of Strategic Command within the UK MOD. Under recent reorganisation, we've now moved into the National Armaments Directorate. Still waiting to see what that looks like. But I'll spend 15 minutes just setting the scene of what Skynet is, the challenges we've got, and the need for significant change in how we deliver the service. And then Pete will take over on the what we are actually doing. So I always work on a principle of put up a slide that nobody can read, because that way you try and stare at it and concentrate and you don't listen to what I'm saying. So I can say whatever I like. The Skynet program is actually an integrated program. It's the ground segment, the space segment, the user segment, all of the integration. Everybody thinks Skynet is purely about the sovereign element of the capability. It's not. We have a concept of own, collaborate, and access. So we own elements. We've owned elements since 1969. We were the first nation to put up a military communication satellite, and we've been in space ever since. We collaborate with our allies significantly, and even more so as we move forward. And we access an awful lot of commercial services, whether or not those are turnkey ground infrastructure, terminals, or commercial services from commercial space providers. So Skynet is essentially that global access to satellite communications for defence, of which an element is very highly assured through Skynet, an element through less assured but still assured through nations, and then our general commercial accesses. We also run all of the ground stations, we acquire all of the terminals for the user community, and we've got a huge investment program going on. So just to put that into context, over the next 10 years, we've got circa 6 billion, give or take. The number keeps on changing depending on the whim of the Treasury. As you can imagine, normally it goes down, not up, but we're hopeful that at some point it will go up. And we're using that really to do a complete refresh of our space segment. We have the Skynet 5 satellites at the moment. They went up between 2007 and 2012. They're excellent spacecraft, but they are becoming to the end of their life, so we need to refresh the space segment. We need to refresh our ground segment. We have 2 ground stations in the UK. We lease another one in Australia. Those ground segments, ground stations, control stations, they need significant refresh as the world moves forward. And then we've got a complete refresh of our user segment as well. Largely, we break the user segment into 2. We have those strategic assets which we buy as a centrally funded and centrally managed core service. So the big military terminals we put on our capital ships, the strategic land deployable terminals that can go and support brigade and divisional headquarters, those we provide, and they are in desperate need of replacement. The more tactical terminals, we have a rolling program of just replacing those because they're not hardened, they don't have a design life which is or a design structure which is built for austere, adverse conditions. So we recognise they're a commodity. So we generally look to replace those more user, easily deployable terminals more readily. And also we need to reflect on the fact that the cyber threat is changing very rapidly. And therefore, something that was cyber secure 5 years ago potentially is now cyber vulnerable today. So it's understanding it's not just does the kit still work, does it still work in an operating environment and a threat environment that we operate in today. As Kevin said, whenever I speak to seniors in the MOD about Skynet, 90% of them, the only thing they're interested in is spacecraft. They forget that over 10 years, 75% of my budget will ultimately be spent on ground services. As I also say, 99.9% of my day-to-day issues and incidents and problems are ground-based. Less than 1% are space-based, and when we do get a space-based issue, it gets quite interesting, and everybody gets really excited. But by far, the majority of my team, from an operational day-to-day basis, are there managing the user and the ground aspects of the program. So I just thought to put in context what we are doing, and one of the next slides is a bit of alphabet spaghetti. So we are looking at replacing our next generation land terminal. That is out for competition at the moment. We've just issued they used to call it a pre-qualification questionnaire. What is it? PSQ now, isn't it? Yeah, or what is a PQQ? So we've just issued that. We've had responses. We're expecting to down select within the next month or so. And that will replace our strategic land mobile terminals. So the things, people who are aware of the service, the old reacher terminals. Yeah. So basically, it's a ground station on the back of a lorry. So we're replacing those, hopefully in the next, start the rollout in the next couple of years. So that's NGLT. NGMT, so on board our major ships, so the carrier, the frigates, the destroyers, the support platforms. We have what is called a Scott 5, replacing those, and we're looking at doing that probably in a two-phased approach, which is a tech refresh and obsolescence management of the Scott 5s to allow us to move forward, and then a full, probably dual-band capability procurement a bit later on. The problem we have with dual-band, particularly with the Navy, is we are very constrained with size, weight and power on maritime platforms. The way the UK platforms are built, we put our terminals a lot higher up, the sponsons, than majority of other nations. That means you've got a weight problem for trimming the platform. And somebody once told me 500 kilos of additional weight up at the top means you've got to put 4 tons of additional ballast in the hold. And also understanding can the sponsons actually take it. So as we go to KA, our platforms at the moment are not designed for that configuration of weight in that position. So that's one reason why we're looking to try and extend the Scott 5s a little bit longer to give us time, and our platform time and the industry time, to develop solutions which are within the size, weight and power constraints we have. We're also protecting our modem. So at the moment we have the Paradigm modem, which is our primary secure modem, anti-jam, burning through adversarial jamming. That needs replacing. So we're running 2 procurements for that. Both of them actually looking to be with Airbus. So we ran a competition for what we call our general use protected modem. Airbus won that competition. We have a very specific use case for a set of modems for a specific user, and you can probably work out what that is. And the only supplier that met the highly secure sovereign procurement and manufacture was Airbus. So Airbus are providing our new modems, as they are providing Skynet 6A. So 10 years ago, we went back to the MOD centre, we were in a PFI, we went back to the MOD centre and said we want to replace the PFI when it comes to the end with another PFI. And the government went, nice idea, but no. We decided we want to bring it all back in-house, having all outsourced it in 2003. So what we want you to do is just buy yourself a bit of time, go and buy 1 satellite to augment the aging Skynet 5s, and then sort out what you're going to do. So the 1 satellite we did, we went to the market. Because of the sovereign issues at the time, we single-sourced it to Airbus, and Skynet 6A is due to be launched in about 18 months' time. So that one is in an advanced state of build and started integration testing now, so that's progressing nicely. And Skynet 6A is a narrowband and a wideband capability. But we took the strategic decision that we wanted to divorce wideband platforms from narrowband platforms. So the next generation after 6A, we are looking at a narrowband capability, which at the moment we are in discussions with Thales Alenia Space, and they are giving us a proposal for the narrowband capability. And the wideband procurement, that is out at the moment. That's a live competition, so I'm not going to speak about it. We've got 2 bidders running for that, and we shall wait to see what comes out. Both narrowband and wideband, they're due to start delivering capabilities 2030-ish, 2032 in that region. So again, we start to refresh the space segment in 2028 with 6A, then 2030, then 2032, outwards and onwards. Now, the narrowband, 6A brings a real opportunity and a challenge for us because it's got KA on it. We've never had a KA infrastructure in the UK. We've never had military KA. So we're having to look at how do we ground KA services within the UK, and how do we offer those services to the user community. So at the moment, we're concentrating on how do we ground it. It gives us another unexpected challenge, is something we didn't think about at the time, of the satellite filings and orbital deconflictions, the frequency deconflictions of where you can put things where you don't have seniority. But at the moment, we are looking at how do we ground MIL-KA. And then the service delivery wrap, as I said, we had a PFI from 2003, and we migrated that to a Babcock-led solution in March 24. So at the moment, we're still working through an exit of a 20-year arrangement and 18 months into a new one. So all of those items effectively are represented up there. So it looks quite simple. Until you then add to that all of the contractual responsibilities that I and my team now have to manage. Before, I had one contract, and that was MOD to Airbus, and Airbus managed that entire end-to-end service as a PFI. Now, my team have to manage all of those contractual relationships. We then have to manage all of the relationships that go through our service provider, because that's our contract. So not only am I managing multiple contractors, I'm also now responsible for all the interdependencies that my primary service delivery agent is giving. And then when you add on to that, I now own the technical architecture that I haven't owned for 20 years, to try and make certain that what we're buying, we can integrate. What we can integrate, the user can use, and what the user is using is effectively giving them the operational advantage they need. I always call this the crayon diagram, because the first time I saw it, it looked like a 5-year-old who'd done my first drawing. Yeah, it was Pete who actually did this. So, but I've got no extra staff for this. I have no extra funding for this. So I've gone from managing a very nice black box, and everything that happened in that black box was behind the curtain. So now everything, every single one of those decisions, every single one of those inception points, I and my team are accountable to Parliament for. That's the primary problem we have. So we've done a lot of soul searching, as you can imagine. The MOD is excellent at doing soul searching. Yeah. If in doubt, look at a problem and then polish it. And then when you've polished it enough, look at it again. And then when you've polished it even more, then get some consultants in. And what we came up with a number of things as to what is stopping us from actually moving forward. And what the things we need to fundamentally be concerned about. And we came up with our list, and frontline commands came up with theirs, and we then put it to a set of 2 stars in the MOD who actually didn't disagree with us. But what they did say was, oh, you've forgotten this, and what about that? So they added to our list of problems, which is generally what 2 stars do. But I won't go through the list one by one, but just a couple of things. We have to improve our agility, and I know that's a buzzword, but if I say we started the Skynet 6 program we got approval for the Skynet 6 program in 2016. My first spacecraft arrived in 2028. My first major ground infrastructure program starts to deliver probably 2027. That's horrendous, but that's the government way of doing business at the moment, and that's what we and people like the National Armaments Director is basically saying is fundamentally the problem. So we've got to improve our agility. The threat is changing faster than we can react. Spacecraft we are putting up today will be in service until around about 2045, 2050. The threats that we were expecting to be around in probably 10 years, 5 years ago, are here today. So the rate of threat increase is something we cannot keep up with. So we need to find a better way of doing that. And my biggest concern is ground-based threat. We've seen the dangers or the opportunity of damage by unmanned air vehicles. You saw what happened in Russia. I've got 2 ground stations. If you want to make me blind, take out my ground stations. Don't worry about the space element. That crayon diagram, we've got to get after integration. How do we integrate different capabilities, new capabilities, into an old system? We're not throwing everything out with Skynet when we refresh it, but it's how do I get old out? How do I get metric and imperial to work together? All of that leads to unquantifiable risk that I'm taking. And if I'm taking unquantifiable risk, that means the operational warfighting community is taking unquantifiable risk. Because bear in mind, one of the things we provide is that push a button, scream for help, and help arrives. If we don't enable that, push a button, scream for help, and they're screaming into an empty void, people's lives are at risk. So we need to burn down the risk to that ever happening. And the final thing, before I hand over to Pete, is we have a very transactional relationship with the market. I want this, you can do this, thank you very much. And then we go very quiet for another 5 years, and then suddenly we surprise you all and go, we want this. And you go, well, it'd been awfully nice if you'd have told us 5 years ago so we could do development work and be match fit. That transactional risk or transactional approach fundamentally needs to change. And that is why we are moving to SKIES. It used to be called SKIP. It used to be the Skynet Integrated Partner, until the boss at the time says, don't call it SKIP, because that's where you throw all your rubbish. Come up with a better name. So Pete and his team came up with Skynet Integrated Enterprise Solution, largely to address these issues. Pete, over to you. Almost on time.
No. Good morning, everybody. Just dropped my notes. There are some good things and bad things about following your boss. The bad thing is he's probably standing there and pulling faces at everything I say for the next few minutes. The good thing is he's used 28 minutes of the 30 minutes we've got allocated, so I can only talk for 2 minutes, which is probably a good thing. So let's talk a little bit about SKIES. I can't tell you all about SKIES, but I can tell you a little bit about SKIES and do a teaser for what's coming next, most importantly. Okay, so it's a convenient acronym. SKIES, a really easy word. I can do lots of pictures from the internet to make it look cool and good, but actually it does capture everything that it's trying to address. It's not Skynet 6, it's about the whole Skynet enterprise. It's about a coherent and integrated approach. It's enterprise-wide, so there is an awful lot of, particularly in government, where there is support and contracts that focus in on a specific thing. This is about widening it, making it through life, across all of the aspects of training and logistics, not just delivering a thing on the ground or in space. It'll also become the solution, the way that we do business in Skynet in a few years' time. Barry's given you the official reasons why Skies exists, but I thought I'd go into a couple of examples of some more colloquial whys. So the feedback we have, and I've had more of it yesterday and this morning already, is the sorts of people who are represented here today feel 1,000,000 miles away from Skynet as an enterprise and 1,000,000 miles away from us as the MOD. And do you know what? We feel exactly the same. We feel like we are at too far a distance away from the supply and the market to know what's going on and to tell you what we're doing and what's going on. So we want to change that. This could look like a really bad list of why you should never work for the MOD, but I think it's really important that if we recognise where we're not very good, that's got to be a good thing. So please don't send this to the Sun. We do need to live within our means, and actually that has many facets to it, but one of the key drivers is we are not going to get any bigger as a team. It is almost impossible for us to get bigger as a team. And the government has, of course, targets to reduce civil service costs by 10%. So we are not realistically going to get any bigger. We are not realistically, with the salaries that are paid in the civil service, going to have niche expert skills. It's not something that's going to organically live within our organisation. And there are always budget constraints, always budget constraints. So we need to pivot, I think, from let's spend years writing a gold-plated requirement for a solution, we think, and then try and afford it. It's, we've got this much money, what is the best way we can spend those pounds to get the best solution for the Skynet enterprise? We're also a really, really low volume customer in this market, and we recognise that. We try and convince ourselves internally that we're really, really, really important because we're spending lots and lots and lots of money. But actually, we're important. We know we're important for some reasons, but high volume, we are not. So we need to address how we measure value differently. We don't, does that say, oh, you said we buy, we don't invest. That's what we do, we buy. We don't seed, we don't invest, we don't take any risk of seeding some technologies that might not come to fruition. We want to change that as well. Our capability sponsor, so the person who gives us the money, we spend a large percentage of our effort and angst and time focusing on a very small set of users or use cases. And we need to, they are very keen for us to flip that and say that we should spend the most time of our angst and effort on the majority of the use cases and only spend money and angst on those niche use cases if we absolutely have to. Barry touched on this about requirements earlier, but my analogy is we decide we want an iPhone, and rather than going and saying to Apple, can we have 1 million iPhones, please, to give to everybody in the MOD, we spend 5 years writing a spec for a smartphone that looks sort of like an iPhone, but it's got a few more cameras on it because we're special and we're military, and it's got a slightly bigger screen, and it's 3 grams lighter, and it's in a different metal. And then we get approval to buy 1 million of those, and then we go to the market, and the market says, what are you doing? We don't build that. It's not, it's going to cost you 10 times as much to have that thing. And actually, you've designed an iPhone 11. Because we're thinking about the iPhone 19. So we need to change that transparency of what we're doing and where we're going early so that the market, A, can be match fit, like Barry said, but also tell us to stop if we're doing the wrong thing. One of my pet hates is that we write contracts before we know what the answer is, or we know what the solution is. It's one of the big time drivers for when we start a competition, is that we have to get ourselves to where we think this is what the contract's going to look like. And then get the bidders to mark up that contract to say where it doesn't fit their solution. So we're looking to try and flip that and say, let's work out what the best solution is first, and then let's co-create the contract that's going to deliver that. Let's not do it the way around we traditionally do it. The final thing there is we are slow, late, probably last adopters. We're not tracking things. We're not adopting early. We are the last people to the party to buy something. Just recently, we've been challenging ourselves around, do we continue to buy 1960s technology in the narrowband space, for example? Space, no pun intended. So there's some more colloquial reasons why. And these are the things that are driving my team and the solution. But how do we know these things? We haven't just made them up. We ran a market event a couple of years ago, and we said that this is what we're going to do. We're going to go and do some case studies in government and other parts of the Satcom market. We're going to be creative as a program team. We're going to do some industry engagement. And then we're going to go and talk to the legal and commercial people who will tell us all the things we can't do. So that some constraints. And that's what we've done. So we have narrowed our thinking about where the solution is. And it's not wide like this anymore. We've narrowed it down. Because we now know what the real problems we need to get to. The real reason we know, though, is because the likes of Barry and I are living this every day. Barry has, I would say, an unmeasurable amount of risk. He does not know how much risk he's carrying for his being accountable to Parliament. All of those new projects that are coming that aren't integrated yet, we own all of the risk associated with that. I don't think we know just how big that is and can ever know. But we're also trying to deliver this thing with 70 people. It's not easy. So what's going to be different? This is really just flipping those challenges and those problems. We want to bring the market closer. We want to get closer to the market. We think that will enable us to make better decisions, and it will enable you guys to make better decisions. We recognise that we need to change how we behave. We need to stop behaving like a traditional 1970s government department, and we need to start having trust. We need to start co-creating. We need to start collaborating. We need to move away from multiple versions of the truth. We find ourselves, I think, where we have an engineering function inside Barry's team who knows some things. We have Airbus, because they ran the system and delivered the system for nearly 20 years, they know a lot about it. We have Team Aurora led by Babcock, who are coming up a learning curve and know different things to what we know and what Airbus know. We have multiple versions of the truth. So when we make decisions, we're in a really, really difficult space to make those decisions in an informed way. We also need to move away from having people who advise us what to do, but have no skin in the game. We have a massive, out of necessity, client-side support, but they disappear every 5 years as we recompete them. So they are not and cannot be incentivized to be vested in an outcome in 2035 because they won't be there. So we need a pan-enterprise, not just a delivery focus. We know we need this to be a longer-term relationship, not these tactical short-term relationships, because it is impossible for either side to get any return on that investment. It is impossible. And we want to be visible. We want to be transparent, but not just visible and transparent when we launch a competition in a big hurrah in a venue like this, but when we think we've got an idea of a concept about something we want to do, we're going to share it. We're going to say, we're thinking about doing this. Please tell us if that's a good idea or a bad idea or how, or influence it. And move away from just buying things and start to seed and invest to make Skynet better. So Skies is a business change. A lot of those things I've talked about there are not about contracts, they're not about acquisition, they're not about procurement. It's about the MOD recognising that it needs to behave in a different way to bring you guys closer to make the Skynet solution better. So what next? I think this is almost my last slide, so I'll accelerate. And this is the bit that a lot of people are waiting to see, I think. So finally, I have got approval to run another market day about skies. It will be a full day in November. We are looking to announce that hopefully next week. We have identified a number of really, really pithy problems where actually we don't think we should make the decision unilaterally. We want to actually bring the likes of you guys and say, we don't know whether we should do A, B or C. What do you think? We could easily go away and decide it's B, but we don't think we can work out which one is best. There'll be a plenary download on Skynet Skies from some quite senior stakeholders, so up at 1 and 2 star level. And then a range of focus sessions where we are going to get round some tables not much bigger than these, and some bigger discussions about what the views are on those problems. So that is coming. So watch the .gov.uk page where that will be announced, or on the Defence Sourcing Portal, which is the normal formal way we have to announce those things. It's coming in the next week or so. I'm looking forward to it. I'm nervous about it, not just because of the admin of arranging something that size, but because we're actually going to be opening our kimono, and we are going to be showing you where we think our problems are and where we don't know the answers. And that's, I have to say, there are some stakeholders that are very, very uncomfortable about doing that, but we're going to do it, and we're going to rip the Band-Aid off. We might regret it, but if we can't show those behaviours in the early part of Skies, then Skies is not going to be a thing. I'll summarise my experience over the last day or so. I've talked to so many people from so many companies that I have never spoken to before. We don't normally get exposed to the likes of the people who are sitting in this room because we are often have a big prime contractor in between us and things like that. Approximately 75%, like Barry said, of the money we have, so that's £4.5 billion in rough order of magnitude, we spend in the next 10 years on the ground, not in space. We don't know what's out there. Genuinely don't know what's out there. I've learned so much in the last 24 hours. We need to keep learning that, and we need to make sure that the formal processes and arrangements are in place that we keep learning that. And we know that if we design it on our own, we'll get it wrong. So I think we'll get it wrong for us, but we'll also get it wrong for you. So we are launching next month your way in to influence what that solution looks like. That's me.
Thank you very much.
I think, Barry, I went over the time, so there can't be any questions.
So we are going to take a few questions from the floor.
No, we're not.
I'm sure people want to talk to you. Have we got any questions?
Peter, Barry, I'd like to thank you for your presentation because it resonates with so many things I remember over the last 5 years, especially an event with many MODs and the Pentagon, when the Pentagon said, we're fed up of running 5-year tenders, we make an award, and then we have to wait a year for the boffins or the prime supplier to play with the leading technology before we can get hold of it. So the view was, we're going to look at the market, see what the cuts available are, test it, see if we can harden it and scale it, then we'll call it MOTS, and it'll meet our needs better and in time. Is that world coming?
Yes, very much so, not quick enough. So the direction we have from our seniors is the principle of COTS first, MOTS if it has to be, and bespoke over my dead body. We've had a couple of few dead bodies. But that whole principle of, as Pete said, we are the world leader in designing yesterday's technology in a bespoke way that can't be delivered and then being surprised. So we are very much now going down the COTS and MOTS element because there are certain things we do need because of the operating domain we operate in. And we have to, and I was just saying to, I think it was Kevin earlier, we have to recognise we design things not for the benign environment. We have to design stuff to support active warfare, both on the ground and in space now. So pure COTS quite often can be a challenge. For the tactical user, it probably is fine. But where the US are, and I really want to get to, is I can't remember what the event is, you might be, where they get a load of industries together and effectively you get a number of DoD people with a corporate credit card. And it's almost a bit like a dragon's den. These companies pitch something and then the group of DoD officials go into a huddle and say, right, we will invest $200,000 now.
You mentioned all the words. It's called the Space Pitch Day.
Thank you. I knew what it was. I couldn't remember what it was called. I'd love to get to that point, to get to the very essence of the issue that Pete said. We buy things. We don't invest in the industry. That pitch day approach that the US do fundamentally is a game changer. We'd love to do that. Unfortunately, our parliamentary rules at the moment don't allow it. But again, as we move, and I'm not going to talk about defence reform, but as we move into a National Armaments Directorate, it's those initiatives that he wants to get after. Because he comes from industry, or the current one we have, the interim one, comes from industry, comes from the space industry actually. He sees the real benefit of what for the government is a marginal investment, making a huge change. But we need to get over the hump of our parliamentary processes don't allow it. So yes, it's coming, but not very quickly.
Right, we have two questions at the back here. First one.
Hi there. So the US Space Force has just announced a working capital fund with a value of more than $1 billion to help military agencies buy commercial space services. So shouldn't MOD be thinking about doing something similar?
So let's just put it into context. At the moment, the UK MOD has, in orbit, it has 4 Skynet 5s, 2 Skynet 4s, and 1 experimental Tyche. And that is the totality of the MOD's space capability, and then if you scale that to the ground as well. The US DoD have something like 80 to 100 spacecraft. $1 billion is a drop in the ocean for the whole of the DoD. Now, I don't know what over time span that is. I haven't seen the press report. And it's largely that funding that they're using for that industry pitch day. We don't have a bank account that we can just dip into in the same way the US do. They have a fundamentally different approach to their appropriations and how they approve expenditure. If we could invest in a research capability of that scale, bring it on, absolutely. But it's not something that's in the Treasury plans at the moment.
Right, we have another question here.
Hey, Barry. How much clarity do you get from your stakeholders, the services, the people you're providing this service for, in terms of service provision now and into the future, and how is that articulated?
Engage polite mode. There might be some in the audience, Barry.
I know, that's what I'm worried about. I get an awful lot of clarity. I get an awful lot of help. The problem is I don't get consistent clarity. I don't get consistent help, even from the individual services. What one part of the Navy want, another part of the Navy will detest. What one unit in the Army wants, another one will absolutely refuse. It's getting that coherent demand signal that is the challenge. We have the joint user, a community who represents the operational community. And over the last 18 months, 2 years, that community, the joint user community, has ramped up significantly in driving a coherent approach. The problem is, again, if you look at the individual services and the operations they are supporting, they are very, very different to each other. And it's what I can't do is give a bespoke solution to that unit, a bespoke solution to that unit. And it's trying to get that, how do we provide a blended core service that if a specific operational community then want to augment it with some commercial stuff, that they can, that we've got an open architecture that allows commercial capabilities to plug into the core Skynet capabilities. And that's the only way we can ultimately satisfy everybody. Put a strong core in that is open for other stuff going in.
We've got time for one more question over here.
Please somebody ask a question for Pete.
Joe Willis, Vodafone Business Security Enhanced. So the services are often very personality driven, from my experience anyway. You talked about going out to tender for contracts, but more importantly than that, the leadership that you're working with often changes hands, sometimes as soon as 1 to 2 years. So how do you deal with that when you're planning, you talk about planning 5, 10 years in advance, because from my experience, that's often the problem, because, one person's MBE or OBE is another, is another person's job. So how do you deal with that when you're in the chair for a longer period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I've been nominated to answer this. Is that Jim? Is that what it's a really good question, and actually, it's an impossible conundrum to solve. The stakeholders, our customers, are military, and they rotate round for lots and lots of different reasons every 2 to 3 years, and sometimes more often than that. And I think we will attest to say that when they rotate round and you have a different personality, a different perspective, a different view, a different favourite hot topic, it is very, very, very difficult to get any continuity and that clarity. I think if we build my response into the one that Barry just gave around clarity from the users, I think they have a really, really hard job, actually, because we are effectively saying to them, what do you want your iPhone 22 to do? And they haven't got a clue. They don't know what they want their iPhone 20. In fact, they don't care. What they say is, we want to go and be able to do the things that we do. And we want to do them with the best kit. And we want the people who are working with us in NATO allied forces to be jealous of what we've got. And that's sort of the... So what we try and do is to focus them on not the solution and not the answer, but what are they trying to achieve? What outcomes are they trying to achieve? Now, if we successfully do that, actually, as the personalities interchange, we see less of an impact. If you are focusing them on what is your concept of use, what is your concept of operations, what's your concept of employment, if we can focus them on those sorts of military doctrine type things, we get better results. If we allow them, and I think it is probably if we allow them to write the tech spec or point us at a shiny thing that the Americans have got and they haven't got, that's where it becomes a really tactical, high turnover, and it's just exacerbated by the problem that you highlight there. It's a real problem. I think we need to focus them better, and if we do that, then I think that'll be okay.
And I think it goes back to the point that Pete made that under Skies is actually a business and a cultural change in the MOD. And that's what we need to drive forward. So actually, it becomes slightly agnostic as to a change. We're all driving to a common purpose.
I'm sorry, you can't escape yet. We've got one last question.
Yes, my name is Francesco Cataldo, IKMG. I've got a few questions. We've been debating yesterday about LEO, MEO, GEO, IoT, and I think that an MOD normally needs to have connection worldwide. you're talking about SpaceNet. What about the LEO constellations, and there are many, and about IoT for what concerns these units where you need to measure whether they are GPS or whatever application you have?
How are we going to move to Leo and Leo? You always know when someone's asked a good question, don't you?
It's how to answer that without getting sacked.
I won't tell anybody.
We've got to be very careful, because I go back to the purpose of a hardened, secure military capability, noting that we are, because of our role as a nuclear nation, we have to be very certain about the ability to communicate in all, and the quote is, all foreseeable circumstances. The threat associated, or the threat vectors for MEO and LEO are different to those of GEO. It's easier to harden to certain standard geostationary satellites. Makes them horribly expensive. So there is a role for MEO and LEO. We are looking at it. We are using a lot of Starlink terminals at the moment and moving to Starshield. We're looking at the other LEO providers. We're in discussions with SES because Team Aurora, as Pete mentioned, led by Babcock, their strategic partner is SES. So we're looking at SES and the O3B capabilities. So we are looking at how we blend LEO and MEO services into that enterprise. Remember I said we have an own collaborate and access. At the moment we are looking at LEO and MEO more of an access than something we are going to own. So we are looking also at multi-orbit terminals and how all those fit together into that enterprise. But our core backbone is, for the foreseeable, hardened military secure, is going to be, for the time being, GEO. And also, I can't see the UK government being able to afford a UK sovereign LEO capability that is has a depth of quantity that makes it resilient.
The UK government has invested in OneWeb.
Yes.
I think
So remember, we invested in OneWeb in 2008, 2019, 2020, and the Defence Secretary at the time was very, very clear that that was a Department of Business decision, not a defence decision. The current government has a slightly different view, that it is a government decision. We are looking at OneWeb. We're doing trials with OneWeb at the moment. At the moment, OneWeb Gen 1 provides a range of services. We're waiting to see what Gen 2 ultimately eventually looks like. But the challenge we have at the moment is, and we have it with others, if I want to send a platform out with access to Intelsat, Eutelsat, OneWeb, Starlink, Kuiper, Yarsat or Space 42, whatever, the amount of individual bits of kit I've got to send with them to enable that, I need to send a bloody tanker with them. So that's what we try to do, is at least narrow down slightly so that we don't send a huge logistic challenge, but also recognising things like OneWeb, that they will provide new capabilities, that their new terminals are looking really good. So there is a place for multi-orbit, but for the time being, from a sovereign-owned, it's likely to be, or it will be for the next generation, definitely GEO. What comes after that? Who knows?
Thank you.